done enough episodes at this point where I'm not counting the numbers anymore. So I don't know what we're at now, 10, 13, something like that, but we're beyond counting. Great to have you all here. Episodes at this point. I'm getting some feedback. So great to have you all here. Sorry, we're a couple minutes late. We were dealing with some technical difficulties. Hopefully everyone can hear me all right. And we're going to get right into it. We've been having a lot of success on this, just like open AMA. The conversations we had last week were so great, provided a ton of value to people. I got some emails specifically about that. We had like a 20-minute back and forth with her name was Becca on an account-based marketing conversation that people had like a lot of great things to say because we got deep into the details. We talked through measurement, tactics, budgeting in like a real life situation. I think it helped a lot of people. So we're going to continue down this path of open AMA. If you want to come on live and talk back and forth, that we'll prioritize those because I think they're the most valuable for people. And if you just feel more comfortable asking an anonymous question, you can send that directly to Kaylee in a DM. Or if you just want to ask a question, then you can shoot that in the regular chat and we'll queue them all up. And let's make this another great episode. I always say it, like you all could be doing anything with this hour. And I'm really grateful that you're here, spending it with us. And so excited to jump into it. Let's do it.
Awesome. Let's get into it. So we've got a couple of questions that were submitted beforehand anonymously. I'll start with those. But like Chris said, if anybody wants to chime into the chat and come on live, just make sure you note live in your chat. We'll be sure to bring you on. All right, let's see what this one says. It's pretty lengthy. We made a pretty substantial investment into a sales media company for 2023. We're looking to tap into their reach and credibility that they've already built in the space. This person has laid out clear KPIs and goals from the partnership with the expectation that this investment will help us build our email list, drive quality traffic to the site, and then drive people to actually use their freemium product in the first half of 2023. Fast forward, it says, we're 2 weeks into this partnership and our CEO and board are already wanting a breakdown on pipeline and revenue impact by the end of next month. How do you guys go about positioning this from a 6 to 12 month perspective using revenue R&D and the signals, the early signals on and later in the year instead of them expecting success upfront?
Yeah, so this is the exact perfect situation to use a 5-stage framework like revenue R&D to work through from just a concept and an experiment that has no results all the way through progressively, instead of just saying it needs to go from 0 to $1 million a quarter in pipeline, which is what the executives are asking for, to be able to chunk it out and say, in order to build this, this is what's going to happen. We're going to try and go from phase 1 to phase 2 in the first 2 months. And what phase 2 means is that, like, whatever you can talk through the criteria, you can adjust our recommendations based on your overall KPIs. We want to get 25 freemium signups, or we want to have 1,000 people from this newsletter join our email list, or you decide. So the first step is it can be a numerical signal that's not related to pipeline to get it to phase 2 that's indicative of meeting the target. Everything from phase 2 forward has to be pipeline oriented. And so to get from phase 2 to phase 3, maybe you need 20 freemium signups to convert into pipeline for paid or enterprise plans. Phase 4 might be we need $500,000 in pipeline. Phase 5 would be $1 million in pipeline per quarter. And so by chunking it out, you can, one, show them, here's our plan of how we're going to get there. And no, we're not going to go from phase 1 to phase 5 in the first 6 weeks like you're asking. But here's what we're going to measure to track that we're on pace to whatever the goals we've set out to build. And if we get to a place where we're off track on this plan, then we can have a conversation and revisit these investments. And it's not only about our email list that we should be doing with this. We should be doing this with every single program that we run, every single revenue investment that we make, SDRs, advertising, events, content syndication, Google ads, across the board. And we should be looking at this on a periodic basis, every mid-quarter, maybe bi-quarterly, mid-quarter, and then a quarterly review, and say, how are all these things tracking? And then reevaluate all of the investments, not just the new investments. This is another issue that I have, that I posted about it earlier this week on LinkedIn, that companies love to, executives and companies love to scrutinize new programs because it feels unfamiliar. But what they fail to do is scrutinize all this place where they already spend a lot of money. So this new program, it's going to take 2% of the budget, gets scrutinized heavily. And then the other 98% of things that they already spend money on, 30% on events, 30% on Google ads, content syndication, review sites, Gartner, all that other stuff that they spend money on, doesn't get scrutinized at all. It, like, in their brain becomes a fixed cost, like an OpEx expense, and don't scrutinize it. So we need a process to be looking at all of these investments and evaluating whether we should start, stop, continue in each of them. So, and then it's about setting up the right KPIs and measurement. Like for this email list, like it's most likely gonna have to be direct response. Like someone has to click on the email, sign up for a free trial, click on the email, sign up for your email newsletter, email list, in order for it to actually register and be measured appropriately, which is fine. That's typically what an email newsletter is going to do anyway. So it's a tough situation. I know every marketer goes through this, or anyone that's trying to innovate and go to market, salespeople trying to do a new program or new stuff. Every single thing with new programs is going to get scrutinized with a much deeper lens and a much shorter time window. And so by trying to implement a way for you to evaluate all the programs, the best thing to do here is to be able to evaluate all the programs and identify how much money is being wasted in other ones, and then be able to use that budget for other things. Like executives need to be able to see that it's not just the new things that should be scrutinized, it should be all of the things.
Brilliant. We've got someone in the queue who's to ask a question live. Let me scan the attendees real quick to see if I can find her.
Do that. I'm going to get in the chat so I can see this stuff too.
Cool. All right, Christina, I've just asked you to unmute so you can join us live.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Chris. Just a really kind of quick question. You kind of answered a little bit of it there, Chris. But I wanted to ask a kind of interview scenario question. So I'm applying for some roles at the moment, and one of them is for head of demand gen for a tech company, B2B SaaS. They've just done their Series B. Well, last year they did the Series B raise of 62 million. I'm a follower of you. I've been following you since I heard about you in 2021. And they've been doing, I guess, what the new VP decides, or term fluff marketing. And she wants to, I guess, start to do some what she calls real marketing now. So as part of the interview process next week, she's going to be talking me through their go-to-market approach. I've tried to do some research, but I've not found much about like what that actually is and what that looks like. And I guess as part of my responses, she's wanting to know what kind of DG strategy I would bring off of the back of her I guess what she said she wants to do for the go-to-market approach. So I was just wondering, outside of everything that you've told us and everything that I've been learning for the last 18 months of following you, if there's anything sort of specific you would sort of say to focus on. I do have a couple of markers in place, but again, they've primarily been focused on brand and not much depth. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's going into an interview like this, I think there are two parts of it. One is being to ask really smart, astute questions to understand the situation better than what you can just find online. And then to demonstrate that you have business acumen, that you can relate to them and participate in an executive level, things like that. And then there's another part to be able to use that information to be able to craft a strategy in real time based on the things that you're hearing. You can obviously be prepared on some things. You can go and look at their LinkedIn company profile and look at their posts, their ads. You can go to SEMrush. You can look at their Google traffic, estimates of how much they spend on Google ads, things like that. You could potentially ask them in preparation. You could say, are you willing to share some part of a slide deck of what you presented for the last marketing executive meeting or board meeting that were related to marketing? Then you'll get to understand what KPIs are they measuring, what's important, what's the performance. Typically, when I get those types of reports, the only thing that it flags to me is like, are they measuring the right things or not? Are they measuring and reporting at an executive level, and are they measuring the right things or not? So you could get some of that stuff in advance, and then like to on the asking the right questions. It's like, and this isn't about like trying to evaluate whether this is a good company for you. This is about being able to show that you can participate in an executive level. So like, what are the key initiatives that you have in this year? Are you trying to move up market? Are you trying to win your top 10 out of the 50 companies on your strategic account list? Are you trying to grow as much pipeline? Are you trying to build brand awareness? Like what's the goal of what you're trying to do? What are the key initiatives? And then at the tactical level, like I would be reluctant to like say, given how little you know about the company right now, I'd be reluctant to give any like real advice on what to do, but I would talk through my process of what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to go and talk to our top 10 customers and understand who they listen to, what channels they use, what communities they participate in, what podcasts they listen to, what thought leaders they trust. Do they use review sites like Software Advice and G2 or that Trust Radius or not? And then I would go and talk to people that don't buy, that are like them, and I would do the same thing. And I'm going to get a good understanding about where are the primary places that people go, and if the data says people are getting information on LinkedIn or from here, or they like podcasts, then I'm going to use that information to craft a strategy that matches what our customers say. Like I think that's the right answer. And in that type of setting, it's not everyone's going to be like this, but what I care about is the ability to think critically and what the process is.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And I think you're right, because it's really difficult to, I mean, obviously you can look at a website and LinkedIn, but there's only so much you can get from that. And I guess from speaking to the recruiter, I know that they're in the midst of overhauling a lot of stuff. So I guess it's also an opportunity for me to talk to my views on what's current for them to kind of like know and sort of see as well. But I think on the GG point, you're correct. I mean, I know that the new VP is a member of Pavilion, which made me think, oh, maybe they know about you and your strategies, so maybe it'll make it a lot easier when I talk about this approach. But failing that, just talking through like the tips and the pointers that you've mentioned and that I've also employed in previous places as well. So yeah.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Happy to help.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Back with good news.
Yeah, please do come back next week and let us know how it goes.
I will do. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for joining us. I can't wait to hear your full report. We've got another question I'll ask on their behalf. This person says, let's see, we are about to make our first CX marketing hire. Any insights on how you would apply your methodology for marketing programs that are focused on increasing user adoption, improving ARPU, and reducing churn?
I was getting into the chat here. Improving adoption, improving ARPU, and reducing churn.
You got it.
Yeah. It's interesting, when I think about like CX, that's not exactly what I think about. But let's go with it. Like the goals are what matters, not necessarily the semantics of the job title. So
yeah, they framed it as CX marketing hire. So customer marketing is probably how they're trying to frame up the responsibilities.
Yeah.
And I guess their KPIs will be
churn. What was the last one?
User adoption.
Yeah. And then it's also like, again, we talked about this on the ABM one, which is why I love back and forth here, because there's like a lot of layers to this, right? Like when you say like increase user adoption, is it the total number of users that hit a stage like PQL, or is it the percentage of people that sign up for a free trial that convert into a PQL? Is it a volume metric or is it an efficiency metric? It changes what you do, because like if we're talking ARPU here, this is probably like a super transactional PLG SaaS company.
I can add some clarification. Sorry, I have COVID,
amazing.
so
Hey,
I wasn't
even. Oh well, I hope you feel better. But thanks for joining. This is a nice surprise.
So yeah, it's going to be focused on it's not transactional. We do everything by contract, usual annual. Post implementation, we have a drop off in users that are added 6 months after our company started business with us, right? And so this person is going to be helping to kind of manage the overall user life cycle, just improving their adoption of our features and capabilities, eventually trying to make sure that the overall account usage is higher, which of course is going to reduce churn. And then there's an upsell component, which is the increase in the ARPU, adding on features, capabilities, extending contract terms, all that good stuff on top of it. So it is interesting because it's sort of like a demand gen job, but it's focused internally, and we know everyone that we'd want to talk to and market to, right? So it makes it easier in some ways and then harder in other ways.
Totally, yeah. And this is let's talk through the metrics a little bit more. I'm fascinated by this because like the parallel that I would give to this is like when companies make customer success accountable to retention, when customer retention or NRR is really a business metric, not a customer success metric. Customer success plays a part in it, but if sales sells a bunch of customers that aren't good fits and gives them huge discounts, and they come in and they don't get implemented properly by the customer ops team or the implementation team, then like customer success only has so much influence over retention. And it feels kind of similar to me in this role, right? Like I think this role can influence these metrics, but it'd be interesting to talk through and how you go like one level deeper to understand like more clearly the actual impact. Have you thought about that at all?
So the overall goal this year for us is to reach 100% net retention, where our expansion is offsetting all of our churn. It's sort of like a gold standard when it comes to CX. It is in support of the broader CX team initiatives, but it's just trying to help do things at a larger scale. Historically, this is kind of owned partially by product marketing and campaign manager with free time. The only difference here is this is 100% focused on this. They're gold, they're quoted, they are incentivized based on the CX team's performance against these sort of broader strategies. So yeah, it's the first I've seen it. It seems to be relatively new and emerging field within SaaS. I just didn't know if you guys had some sort of point of view on it already, but hey, if you're wanting to workshop it with me, I'd be willing to dedicate.
Let's workshop it right now. This is why we do this stuff. I don't have like a huge point of view, but we could figure it out together. So like I would almost treat this like a customer focused account-based program, account-based demand gen program.
Right.
So when we're talking like user adoption, or actually, user adoption within the first 6 months, like it'd be looking at who is the account, who are the relevant users, who are the people that have an account, who are the ones that don't, and then be messaging to that account, potentially use case based too. So it's also on the like reduced churn, like expanding use cases earlier on would be something that I focus on. Social proof. If you really wanted, or if you had a like high priority accounts, you could do one-to-one account based, like run LinkedIn ads just to employees of Salesforce and try and get them to be your 7-figure customer. If the accounts are large enough, then you can do one-to-one account stuff on like a LinkedIn or something like that. There's also this idea of prioritization, like who do you prioritize? Do you and I'm thinking out loud here, so I'm interested in your perspective. Like, do you prioritize the lowest performing accounts, the best performing accounts, the middle 50%? It's like an interesting sort of question, or all of them. It's a really interesting question to think about, because that can be divided, right? Like the bottom 25%, maybe CS should be working on those, not customer marketing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that the first step is going to be definitely identifying those cohorts and prioritizing them based on the impact potential for the goals. Maybe the bottom 20% are always going to churn no matter how much we do. That might be something that we arrive at. I'm not 100% sure, but based on company size, based on goal, either reducing churn or upselling or just improving adoption of core features and functionality. I think that'll be kind of the first step. The mixture of tactics and channels that we use, I think, remain, at least that's my thought. It sort of remains the same. It's just the messages that you send and who you're sending to and what frequency or velocity sort of changes.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of what we do this with. It's not exactly the same, but like there are a lot of parallels here. You take a company that's like horizontal product, can be sold into basically any company, right? So it's a big total addressable market, and they also can build through seat-based user expansion, can build $1 million accounts with big companies. But it starts at $7 a month per user or $12 a month per user. And then they have their top 1,000 accounts based on overall potential. And then someone signs up. So now you have one user in there, right? This account could be $1 million account, but they're paying $7 a month. And then what we do with them is try and figure out, how do we go from one user to 25 users? And then once they get to 25 users, then that triggers an enterprise sales motion to go and convert them onto an enterprise plan with a long-term contract. So there's from a user adoption, that area is really interesting. Some of the key learnings that we've had is having a defined set of accounts is really helpful when it comes to measuring effectiveness. Because if you go after everyone, it's hard to tell what is the actual cause. So by picking a subset of accounts, we found that is really helpful. If, for instance, for us, it's only the most valuable accounts or their top 1,000 account lists. We're not going to go to the 200 person company and try and get them from one user to 25 users because the potential isn't high enough. So having the right set of accounts, or a defined set of accounts, and then a lot of the stuff you can use a lot of what I would call a lot of the core plays that we talk about on this podcast and on these live events. LinkedIn is really strong for account-based targeting. If you use other tools, you can use other tools. Inviting customers onto a podcast, I think, is a really interesting thing, both for learnings, relationships, potential expansion. So maybe just if it was customer marketing, having a podcast where you just interview customers, I think is a really interesting idea for a lot of different reasons. Anything in particular that you've been thinking about, and if we get down to tactics?
Yeah, I think so these are users who get invited. They are paying for a seat already in most cases. The fact that they're just not using, be the equivalent of someone using, getting a Salesforce invite and then just not ever opening it, right? And so how do you bridge that gap? I think it's going to be a combination of automated LMS type, learning systems, incentivizing that buyer or that user to get to the finish line on whatever training we provide. Webinars, and then sort of some sort of automated intervention where if you meet some sort of usage threshold, so it triggers some sort of action by either the CX team or email or some sort of response, right? Just to kind of intervene before. There's a lot of leading metrics that we can get in our database that are showing us kind of where a customer might be headed. But I do like the idea of kind of bringing together the personal touch with the sort of automated touch. I think it's going to be a mixture of those two.
Yeah. Well, keep pioneering, right? This is a relatively new, but I continue to expect that it will grow, especially given the shift in focus to NRR. So it makes a lot of sense. The key challenge that I've always found for when like running quote unquote like demand or customer marketing, whatever you want to call it, is basically demand for expansion is a good way to look at it, or demand for expansion and retention. Is that it's really difficult to understand what's working and what's not outside of qualitative signals. So hearing from customers and what's working for them and stuff like that can work, but like a current customer is not going to fill out your demo form. They might show up to a webinar. You might be able to run some correlation that say people that show up to webinars are 6% more likely to renew. Like there are some ways to get there, but it's pretty challenging to dial in like a cause and effect relationship in this, given that most people are just going to engage with sales or account management or CSMs in order to renew or expand. So you don't get a lot of, you don't have a lot of good signals there, or like you don't have a great level of attribution. But there's also another side, like, so the qualitative works really well. And there's another side of the coin where like companies just, I think will over time just start believing in doing this. But again, when you believe in doing it, you still need some element of data to indicate whether it's working and what's not. And I think that having not done this a ton in my career, I still think that qualitative signals will be the right method.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Omar, what's up, man? Good to have you here. I think we're chatting later today too, which is cool.
We've got Aid too in the queue. Hang on one second, Aid. I'll ask you to unmute and join us live.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Gotcha.
I apologize for the background noise. I've got a house full of kids.
That's all right. What's up, man?
So,
Having fun?
Oh man, the vault. Oh yes, so good, so
Cool.
good. Loving it, loving it. I think everyone on this call is going to be very jealous of what you guys have got going on with the social stuff. Okay, now, not everyone's going to have what you guys had to start with. So I'm keen to explore with you how to enable that, because your messaging is so consistent from every one of your employees. And then from an enablement perspective, onboarding and driving that consistently, how are you guys doing that? Because it's a real challenge for a lot of people like ourselves.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like we were just talking in the leadership meeting yesterday that like we don't really have a documented messaging framework, right? And we should figure it out. So it's really interesting, like the internal view that we have here versus the external view of what you and others see. But so short answer is like we're not doing everything perfect, but I do think that why you see it from the outside that way is because there are leaders in our company who are active consistently, so that a lot of people hear those messages consistently.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that really is what it is. It's not about having a training program or sharing a deck or writing prompts. I don't think that's the way to get there. I think the way to get there is having like leaders that like, I don't write it down in a messaging framework, but I know what it is in my head. You get what I'm saying? So having that down and being able to communicate it consistently then through osmosis. I don't know how many people on our team are at this event, but there's probably 20 to 40 people at our company that are at this event. So by communicating that, people are learning, people are hearing those things. They see it on LinkedIn. They hear about it on the podcast. They hear me talk about it at the all hands meeting. They hear Megan, my business partner, talk about it at the all hands meeting. Other people at our company are sharing it. So when it comes to like social success in B2B, but even, and then further down, message consistency, I really think it is about having leaders that do it consistently.
Yeah, that's the thing that we're working on at the moment. So speaking candidly, I wouldn't say we have necessarily an internal subject matter expert. I've kind of assumed the role, so I'm now championing and driving that. But I would say, I mean, like your typical founding story is not really been articulated. So I've got to kind of bring it to life in that respect. It's a challenge because everyone wants us to ghostwrite their posts for them. But I'm like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's not a popular direction, but I've done it before and had a lot of success with it, of just interviewing external people instead of trying to get. So I think that's a really good path if you're in the situation that you're in. No true SME, founders may not believe in it yet, things like that. It really worked for me at that time because I would go to people that either loved our product or had done clinical trials with clear data about how our product works, and then just like serve them up questions that help them talk about the things that they've discovered that fit our value proposition. So like my situation was potentially a little bit different, but there's a way for you to mold that into something that could work for any business.
Nice. Well, we're kicking off with no surprise. We're using your playbook from the vault, so we'll be kicking that off in the next week or so. So they've all got their first exercise to be running on that.
Awesome.
I'll keep you updated on progress.
Yeah, drop it in the community. We'd love to hear about how it's going.
Will do.
Good to see you, Aiden. We've got a follow up to that riff that y'all just had. That's asking about like what has helped employees be creative or original on their personal posts on LinkedIn. This person says, I echo what Aid said as far as the force in which Refined Labs employees show up on LinkedIn.
So specific to like originality, creativity, flexibility, those types of things, I think this really comes down to a culture element where people feel safe to express themselves and don't have any type of like guardrails or fear of repercussions. I really think that's the answer. And it's hard to change in an established company to go from, I worked at a company. When I posted on LinkedIn, someone from HR came up to me the next day and was like, hey, are you looking for another job? We saw you posted on LinkedIn 2 days in a row. And that's not a culture that's going to create creativity and people posting on LinkedIn. So, and it's hard to, once that company is at 150 people and that's happening from HR, it's not really easy to walk that back. That's like a deeply ingrained culture, started at the executives, CEOs, executives down, and then starts to form. So, I think having the formula remains the same: leaders executing consistently and demonstrating what good looks like, and having a culture where people feel safe to express themselves in any direction. We don't prescribe what people should write. We don't have guidelines. We don't say you can write about this, you can't write about that, or if you write about this, only use this word. We don't do any of that. And then having some level of an enablement program, which I think is like the third leg of the stool, training, onboarding type of things that we do with new people. Incentives can work, but only like the training, incentives, that type of stuff only works if the other two things are in place, in my experience. Like it really ends up being the third thing to do.
Yeah, we've got a follow up too. Duke asked that original follow up and he wants to riff real quick. So Duke, join us live for a second.
Thanks, Kaylee. Yeah, Chris, similar to what other people have said, been following you for a number of years now too. And it really is just something that I'm trying to figure out how I can go about helping our team do some of the same thing. Because almost every post I see from Evan or Cassidy or a number of members of your team, it's just trying to figure out how they go about the originality, the creativity, and the relevance of they're showing up all the time with these really great engaging posts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in a different market in a commodity-based print market. And so trying to figure out, I know one of the ways we could go about that is by asking customers what's insightful information that you'd like to see from us. So I think the market or the industry that we're in maybe is a part of that, but not sure if you have anything else to add on to that.
Yeah, I do have a couple of things. So you mentioned Cassidy and Evan, but other people that post too. One of the key things is that they're in there working with customers almost every day, if not every day. Right. So there's like an element of actually being in with customers that, like, maybe if you're like marketing team or something, like, I think having it come from people that engage with customers frequently is another key element of success that we have here. We're a professional services firm, so it could be a little bit different if you're selling products, but that's one thing. Like in selling a commodity, like your reps are out there talking to people. I don't know what the go-to-market structure is, but there are people that engage with customers frequently, which allows you to understand the topics and then expand the topics outside of just what you do, right? We're not just talking about selling printers or whatever it is exactly. We're talking about go-to-market, retention. We just had a conversation about retention. We do talk about advertising, which we help companies do. We do talk about organic social, which we help companies do, measurement and attribution. So it's like, it's all the topics that the key people that we know care about, not just relevant to the things that we help them with. So expanding the topics out around the actual person or business, I think, is helpful. And then like, I think it really works for us because our perspective is unique. Like we actually have a different and forward-thinking view on what B2B companies should be doing compared to what the masses believe they think they should be doing, which creates some level of interest and friction for people, which creates interest. And so in your situation, when there's like a commodity product that people are probably maybe buying on an RFP or something like that, or ordering a catalog. I'm just assuming here.
You're right.
Yeah. So commodity product, like getting to a like unique point of view about a commoditized market can be pretty challenging. And then that ends up usually coming around business model, pricing and packaging strategies. Like there are some things, but the realization that's happened to me earlier in my career that it really helped me do marketing was realizing that when we were marketing to emergency physicians, that for the most part, they didn't care about our product, that they cared about saving people that had gunshot wounds and drug overdoses, not people that had a cold and were having trouble breathing. And then when you sort of recognize that, then it allowed us to say, okay, when we do our next webinar for ER physicians, what are we going to do? We're going to bring in like an expert that's good at like doing like emergency surgeries on gunshot wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be held by our company we don't have much to do with gunshot wounds. And so it allowed us to change the topics that we think about based on what the audience cared about in a commodity space, or where your customers don't necessarily care that much about your product. Just leaning into the things that they really do care about and trying to have like a quote unquote thought leadership angle that way can also be really helpful.
And I like how you're almost redefining what your product is based on the emotion that it elicits, based on the outcome it provides, not focusing on here's what it does, but here's what it does. And based upon, again, that emotion that it elicits, like you said, the gunshot wound victims, that's an emotion that people could grasp onto of, that's why I like doing what I'm doing, and that's important to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it's some combination of those things, expanding the topics outside of the product, trying to, what else do we have here? Thinking about how people that touch customers a lot are the people that are actually creating it, because they're going to have the most depth of knowledge. And then trying to figure out how you can understand the audience enough so that you're crafting topics that they really care about that may be like parallel, but not directly related to your product.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Happy to help.
All right, we've got several in the queue. Let me try and let's see, we've got Tutor Up live next. Let me ask you.
Yeah, actually, Kaylee, just comment on Ashley's thing real quick. We've done a lot on LinkedIn. Let's just continue on this track.
I missed it. Let's see.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I'd love to hear how you overcome some of the barriers that many face when consistently and originally showing up on LinkedIn. I think that's interesting. So obviously, like my journey to LinkedIn started before I joined Refine Labs and before I was here, back when I was at another MarTech brand. I think for me, like my original barrier was myself. I was surrounded by a leadership team that was really supportive, not to like Chris's earlier point of like, oh, you're posting on LinkedIn. Are you looking for a job? That definitely wasn't the vibe. I was my own barrier, just in the fear of putting myself in public to be, scrutinized and commented on is hard. So I think for me, I had to find my why. And my why is that there's like nothing that brings me more joy than talking to other marketers, understanding their struggles, understanding their wins, etc., and using LinkedIn as like a I don't know, like a bond or a bridge to do that more often was my why. Obviously, it also benefited my company. It benefits this company. All of those are byproducts. But for me to wake up and post on LinkedIn is hard without understanding why I'm doing it. So I think my joy that I get from learning, sharing, growing myself and those around me is what like keeps me motivated when it comes to consistency. And then obviously it's huge to find people that support you, right? Chris supports us. There's no barriers here to what I can or cannot say on the profile that I own. It was the same at my other gig, but I've also been exposed to several companies who don't want you to post on your own profile, don't want you to build in public. And that's totally cool. That's that's their brand, that's their MO, but it doesn't work for me. So I think that's like a huge piece. If anybody's like looking for a new gig, find a gig that really supports how you want to show up on owned channels, on your personal channels, on rented channels, whatever that looks like. But that's my 2 cents.
Amazing. We got one more from Kelsey that looks in line here that
Okay,
I
cool.
want to help with.
Okay, let me read it real quick. Let's see. My company has bought in on the value of thought leadership, but it must always be gated and measured in the same way as demand captured channels. School of thought from execs is that because we use U-shaped MTA, the impact can be effectively measured. I'm having a hard time articulating the shortfalls in this approach. Would love your advice on steering the conversation.
Let's do it. I'm an expert in this one because I've been dealing with people who think this way since 2017 when I started my first video podcast. So I'm going to pull up some data here in a second that we published, and I also will maybe Kaylee or someone else can share the link to the Attribution Mirage and Hybrid Attribution podcast and event that we did, so you can look at that data and share it. But this is the key thing that people that like this need to understand. It helps with the data that we provide, is that software-based attribution doesn't measure everything, and you can't gate every medium of content. It restricts you from distribution channels that you can use. If everything must be gated, you can't do a podcast. If everything must be gated, you can't make a organic social post on LinkedIn. And on and on and on. TikTok, Instagram, non-direct response Facebook ad, YouTube video. You can go on in all of the places where all the customers tell us that it's working, and all of those places become non-viable channels based on the constraints that have been presented in this question. Multi-touch attribution software is great at measuring trackable digital events that result in some level of a conversion, which, as you all know, and all the people listening to the podcast, when you use the internet, there is a very, 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 very small percentage of the time where you're clicking and converting on something that creates a trackable digital event. And so all the other things that you're doing on the internet, on your desktop or on your mobile device, like looking at LinkedIn for 30 minutes a day or looking at LinkedIn for 5 minutes a day, but doing it 10 times a day, using the community like Revenue Pavilion, sorry, they changed the name a while ago, Pavilion or things like that, not tracked. Listening to this podcast in Apple Podcasts, not tracked. Me telling you about the software tool that we use to edit our podcast right now, and then you go and buy that editing software, not tracked. There's just almost every single thing that you do on the internet right now involves communicating with your peers inside of what we call dark social, consuming content or interacting with your peers inside of dark social channels. Now, this becomes illuminated when we pull out this data that just shows, and this is primarily identifying the constraints of touchpoint-based digital attribution. So if you look here on closed won deals, this is our own data taken over a year period of time. And attribution software says that 80% of our closed won revenue comes through organic search, direct search, or branded paid search. And when we ask customers, it's 3%. So it's 80% attribution software, 3% when we ask customers. And then you look at all these other ones, social media, when we measure with attribution software, it says 3% of revenue comes from social media. When we ask customers, it's 41%. podcast never gets measured by attribution software, but in our data, it drives 53% of our closed won revenue, which was like over $10 million, never measured by attribution software. Word of mouth is a huge driver that almost never gets measured by attribution software. The one deal here closed by word of mouth was actually a referral from like a site like G2, which we consider a referral / word of mouth. And so, like, to do quote unquote thought leadership well today, you must execute well on podcasts and social media. And within podcasts and social media, if you're using touch point based digital attribution to measure the effectiveness of it, a majority of the impact to all of the impact will not be reported, whether you use a U-shaped model, a W-shaped model, a first touch, a last touch. It doesn't matter, because social media platforms have privacy policies that restrict them from sending personal data that way, that someone looked at your post or liked it or something like that. They have privacy policies when you run ads to not show the exact person that actually got the ad, or if they click on it and they didn't convert, you're not going to get that. Communities aren't going to tell you what's going on, like feed that data back and be able to show you what's being talked about inside of their community. It's a huge violation of privacy. And the internet continues to move toward more privacy, not less. And so as the internet continues to move toward more privacy, not less, the amount of digital touch point tracking will continue to decline to a level where touch point based attribution is no longer a viable method to measure the success of revenue programs. That's going to happen sometime. Could be 3 years, could be 10 years. I'd argue that today, right now, there are significant limitations which don't make it unnecessary or not a good idea to do it, but to use that as the only method to measure, I think creates a massive flaw in a business's marketing strategy. And so, Kelsey, if you're down to come on, I'd love to sort of like, what do you think? You might have already tried this. You might have been to the event that we talked about that. That was kind of a monologue, but I'd like to make it more of a dialogue. Like, what have you tried already? Or is this something new that you think could help you?
Unmuting now.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, there's definitely sort of a dichotomy within the marketing team on schools of thought where, I'd say maybe half are akin to those in this group and half not. We've talked about, I think there is openness to doing an A/B test on self-reported attribution. I guess my concern is that the company is not investing a lot in social and in podcasts. Like, I worry that it will be some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy if we run this A/B test, because people aren't going to report any impact on those things, right? Because we're not really doing it. And so I liked, one person's comment in terms, I'm just like trying to think of what are data-based ways that I can help shift this school of thought.
Yeah, the data that I was trying to convey wasn't necessarily encouraging you to install self-reported attribution, although I think it could be a good idea. It's more so to illuminate the idea that, like, even if you did start a podcast and started to do it, it wouldn't be measured effective. It wouldn't be deemed successful within the constraints of your measurement system, which therefore drives you not to do it, right? So you almost can't do it anyway because of how the business measures success. Like, to me, if you look at present day, who are the companies that have a great thought leadership strategy, or whatever term you want to use, like, and where are they publishing? They're publishing on LinkedIn, they're publishing on a podcast, they're doing, whether it's some form of physical, virtual, or hybrid events, and they might have their own community. Like, those are the places where people are, I think, where those things are being successful. Like, it's not about gated I don't know, like, people can raise their hand. Like, you all think that, like, you all read gated PDFs every day? That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, I probably read one gated PDF for every million LinkedIn posts that I read. It's not a joke. Like, I consume in the feed a lot. And so if you're just if you have it must be gated so we can have a measurement of who read it, then you just like dramatically restrict the amount of people that are actually going to have the opportunity to consume the content.
Let me interject with a cool angle real quick.
Love it.
So 2 or 3 gigs ago, I was at a company that was 100% gated content, like ride or die. That was like their plan. They were committed, obsessed with it. When I got there, they had just spent 13 grand producing this really lovely designed multi-page PDF, and we're pumped to put it behind a lead wall and see what we can generate. And I was like, okay, sure, whatevs. I'm new here. I don't know. Let's do it. Maybe they get 1 million downloads. I don't know. We did it. 13K in the hole for this, plus, everything else to get it out and get it promoted. We were like 20K in the hole after 6 months and had generated, I don't know, like 100 or 150 some odd leads for it. I used that as a use case. What we did to actually overcome like moving, like, okay, let's get away from this. This is insane. Like, you all have to admit this is ridiculous. We're never going to make any progress doing this. I actually had like a speaking slot on an all hands for the company and asked them, hey, let's do a quick project right here while we're on the call. I, at the beginning, did like a call to action. Go through your inbox right now and count how many gated forms you've filled out in the last 30 days. Send me a tally in the chat. I'll tally it all up at the end and we'll see. 3. Out of the whole company, there were a couple hundred people that worked there. 3 people in the last 30 days had downloaded gated content. Mm-hmm. And that was the eye opener that our CEO needed to be like, whoa, we have to change the game here. So I think there are some creative ways you could try and move the needle if they're still really stuck on it. Like if, industry benchmarks aren't working, pull your own people, see if that's working. Maybe pull your existing customers if your, personas within your business don't necessarily represent the index of people you're trying to get in front of. See if your customers can give you some data points that you could use to help overcome the barriers that are being set up internally that aren't like helping you shift the needle.
I love that. That's super tangible and helpful. What would your thoughts be on like if you ran some sort of like, say, for example, what you just said about this report, this beautifully designed PDF, would you recommend doing some sort of A/B test where you could take and like, okay, we'll put X% of the budget to do like classic lead gen, and then we're going to take this and, turn it into socially optimized content that's ungated, and let's look at like the engagement that we get for A and B. Do you feel like something like that would be helpful?
I'm leaning yes. I was going to say I'm leaning towards yes. I actually think it would be a really great way for you to build a case and something that it's hard for them to push back on. Like, you've already done the leg of the work at that point. If you've got the PDF designed, it's not that much more work to get it optimized for social in-feed consumption. And it's also pretty trackable if they're open to the fact that like you'll be leaning on like impressions, self-reported attribution would be great for you to have set up for this. You could also do like, I know early on, what Chris had said was like, he could see CMOs of people we knew we wanted to get in front of, commenting, liking, engaging, DMing, those types of things I think will come into play hard here. So just set up yourself for success with measurement first, but absolutely, I would say go all in and try it.
Yeah. The only other thing I'll drop is like something that I learned early on. So like at one of my very first actual LinkedIn post when I started my company, I spent like a week writing a blog on like pipeline velocity and how it impacts your go-to-market strategies. And like I spent like a week writing this blog, and then I like get on to LinkedIn and I wrote this research report, like it's free, go get it, added a link. And I looked in Google Analytics a day later, and literally 4 people to the webpage. And then the next day, I took just a paragraph out of the blog and I put it on LinkedIn and I distributed it, and 800 people saw it. Mm-hmm. So it was like 800 versus 4 just by taking a piece and moving it there. So you could use that as an easy comparison. Just track, mm-hmm. like it's easy to track whether you get a lead or a form fill for a PDF, but it's actually not that easy to track. Did someone actually read this? Mm-hmm. So like having an idea of like how many, like another test that I did, like we were running, this is like 2016, Facebook lead forms or LinkedIn lead forms. They download the PDF, it pushes into HubSpot. They get the PDF by email. If they click on the email, then we can cookie them and track all their activity. That's back when I played the attribution game. And the amount of people that actually filled out the form and became a lead, filled out the lead form, compared to the amount of people that clicked on the email and even opened the PDF was only 8%. 1 out of 12 people that filled out the form actually opened the PDF. And so then you're just 92% of the budget is being spent to get people to get their email address, and they never actually even read the content. So I would be trying to compare. Reach would be a great one. How many people actually opened the PDF compared to how many people got reached on LinkedIn? Great, easy metric to show. When you start looking further down, I think it does get messy. I think reach is a good way to look at, or other forms of like direct engagement is probably the best way if you want to run this test. As you start looking further down to like pipeline or form demo conversions, things like that, I think there's like a lot of variables that will be hard to tease out and hard to show you any meaningful data to the table.
Awesome. A lot of great ideas. Thank you. Thanks for spending some
Awesome.
time on it.
Yeah, great question. Let us know how it goes. We'll be back here next week if you need some more help. Go try some of those things and let us know if you need some more help.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
All right, we're at time. We've got, well, let me see if he's still on or if he's dropped. We've got one more question that's actually been in the queue that wants to come on live that's related to gated content as well. If we've got a second to bring him on.
Let's do it. I can go for 5.
Okay, let's do it. Twitter, I'll ask you to unmute real quick.
Okay, can you hear me well?
We got
Gotcha.
you. Welcome.
Yeah, happy to be here. Kali, Chris, yeah, big fan. I'm based in Sofia, Bulgaria, so it's 9 p.m. for me, but I'm really happy to join even at this hour because it's really cool content. Before giving you the question, I want to tell you that I'm super thankful for the tips last time on self-attribution and the Slack automation, and now we have much better alignment across the department and soon, I guess, across the board with the whole company. Today, I saw a video of that you were talking about gated and ungated content, and I was wondering how to start, what kind of goals and to set when you want to engage and why one would actually want to, engage content, what would be the purpose. And for me, it's the kind of environment I work in. It's a tech startup, but it's a deep tech startup. People don't know much about what we are doing, also for the competitors. And just any tips would be very helpful.
Yeah. What's the goal of your gated content right now?
Well, to generate leads that we can contact back. And I would say that we get pretty good number of leads every month. But on the other, hand, I would like to have the content exposed to more people because they don't know much about what we do. And more education really helps to get more, better quality leads and get more traction on the product and get more people in the pipeline for sales.
Yep. So this is like many others, it's a strategy to generate leads to fuel outbound sales, SDRs or like actual AEs. Yeah. And so with that, the key realization is that when companies started this journey of having gated PDFs that people fill out to get that, there was no intent data. There was no website de-anonymization for contacts. There was not very many accessible contact databases. There was a lot of the tools that we have today can now replace the gated PDF. Would a salesperson rather call some random person that downloaded a PDF through a Google like lead form, or target the CMO of a target account that's been on our website 3 times in the past 6 months or something? So like there's supplements that to create contacts to fuel outbound that you can use in different ways, contact databases, account level intent data, things like that. Alternatively, you can just keep having the gated content strategy and then just take that and publish it publicly too. So that would be like a way where like, hey, we don't have to change anything major here. We'll keep doing what we're doing, but then we're going to take this PDF like I did when I mentioned it to Kelsey, take the PDF, and then we're going to break it down and we're going to post it on LinkedIn, and we're going to make it into a like carousel deck, and we're going to run LinkedIn document ads against it, or a million different things that you could do to distribute it more broadly in a non-conversion or gated way. Those are some options that you could, it really depends on, are you like, is the company open to changing the way that we collect leads and deploy outbound? And a good way to help the company decide that is to run an analysis and say, how many gated content leads do we need to collect in order to close one customer? How many calls or touches do our SDRs need to make in order to close one customer? How much does it cost overall between the advertising cost, the cost to publish the content, the cost of the SDRs, the sales team's commissions, all the blended software expenses? How much does it cost us to get a customer through this method? And when I've run that analysis for companies, like, it's pretty fucking bad. Like it's not good. Like, you know, we're talking 3 to 5 month CAC payback periods when you just look at that flow of leads. So that can be another way to help companies or your company get on board with the idea that, like, I know we need a way for our sales team to call people, but maybe this way of getting the leads isn't the best way to do it.
Okay, so one additional question: if we post it ungated and both on our website, and let's say that people post on LinkedIn or other social networks, and you mentioned outbound, would it mean that, say, people that like or comment the posts, then we should go and reach out to those people back?
I wouldn't do that, no. What I would do is, you can get like there's a bunch of tools out there. I don't like to call out any particular one, where like if somebody comes to your website, they can like in some cases figure out what company they work for. Or if there's a company searching on a review site for like your category of software and they're looking at you or a competitor, then you can know which account that is. You're not going to know the exact person, but then you can go and say, okay, these are our top accounts. They're our best fit accounts. They're looking at these places. Let's have our SDRs target the top 5 job titles or job area. Like job titles is probably the best way. Top 5 job titles that we usually sell to in our close one deals. So you could use something like that as a way to more precisely do what this is, which is capture demand. And the reality is, when someone downloads your PDF, the reason they don't close at a high rate is because there hasn't been demand created yet. They're like trying to read a PDF and now we're trying to sell them something. So trying to create a source of leads that have a level of intent that are ready for sales is usually the right move, but you often compromise volume.
Got it. Thanks.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Like always, we stayed 10 minutes late. I'm happy to do it. Love spending time with you. Really appreciate the conversations. It feels like we're having a lot more live conversations. I also love the topics that we're having. So we're going to keep rolling with the AMA. I'll bring in data and different things like that in areas where I think it'll be helpful, so I can share some of that stuff. But we'll keep rolling with this. So if you got stuff that you're working on, think about queuing it up and coming back for another episode, and we can work through it together. I'd be happy to help however I can. Seems like change management has been a big, like, ongoing topic. So if you have things like that, happy to cover that, but also happy to get back into tactics or measurement or whatever is helpful for you. So appreciate you all being here again. Can't wait to see you next week.